Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Climate and Environment session for the Declaration of Human Rights by American Youth. So thank you all for being a part of this journey so far. We're about halfway through all of our development sessions. So I'm really excited for tonight's program because climate and environment is something that our youth members and our community at large are really excited and passionate about. So before we get started, I want to remind everyone we have a great lineup of speakers tonight, and we will have a Q&A with all of the panelists. So please feel free to save all of your questions and comments until then, but please feel free to use the chat in the meantime. So without further ado, I will hand it over to our 11th Youth Observer, Himaja Nagareddy.
Thank you so much, Ray, for kicking us off as usual in a really beautiful way. And hi to everyone who's joining and to people who are watching the recording afterwards. Hello to you as well. We're just so grateful for you all taking time to hear more about climate and the environment and ways that youth rights really align with the work that we talk about in the climate and environment space. I kind of wanted to open up just acknowledging that we are seeing climate change happening in our own backyards, in our own communities. I think that as time has gone on, one of the most inspiring and really scary things that takes being part of the climate advocacy space is just how present this type of crisis is in our own communities. The New York Times reports that the last 3 days were quite likely the hottest in Earth's modern history. Scientists said, as an astonishing surge of heat across the planet continued to shatter temperature records from North America to Antarctica. And I think I read in one article that the current trend, and especially yesterday, was breaking records of around 125,000 years in terms of temperature averages throughout the entire planet. And we've seen, especially in different places, that this has been exacerbated. The planet just experienced its warmest June ever recorded, European researchers said, with deadly heat waves in Texas, Mexico, and India. In the northern Atlantic, ocean temperatures were 2.9 degrees Fahrenheit hotter in May than they typically are at this time of year. And this has horrible impacts. A lot of you know about the El Nino effect and how that is going to likely be exacerbated because of this, and the list goes on. And it's easy to talk about the catastrophe, but everyone here on this call, including our wonderful panelists today, are actively leading the fight to stop the worst from happening. We're seeing it get worse, but we can stop the worst from happening. And that is what joins us all here on this call. That's why we answer the call of action every single time, because we know that we can make a difference. And our speakers are just a small piece of this enormous pie of advocates that are working to create that change. So without further ado, really excited for you all to hear from our incredible panel of speakers. First up, we have Priya Saxena, who is the founder of BioTrail. Priya, we are so grateful that you're here on this call to share your expertise as a youth advocate, for everything that you do for being a youth entrepreneur in the climate space. Tell us more about your work. We're so thrilled for you joining us here today, and the floor is yours.
Hi, I just wanted to start off by saying it is such an honor being here and having the chance to share my experience. I thank Rachel for coordinating this session. When I started high school, I realized that many people and businesses weren't aware of sustainable alternatives. It was problematic with the amount of plastic consumption. I started seeing a slow turnover into sustainable alternatives through the eco-friendly straws and styrofoam alternative movement, and found the change to be a step forward to the right direction, but it had many flaws. Sustainable studies and business have always been fascinating to me. I believe that a green economy will bring more in profit for businesses and organizations than the current unsustainable economy. While working with Columbia University's Earth Institute, I realized that a group of multifaceted leaders with different perspectives is in dire need when it comes to policy, peacemaking, and negotiation. South Asians aren't well represented in government, and usually it's the lack of resources and connections. Diverse perspectives of the youth especially, and emotional intelligence are key attributes that would add value to the environmental movement. My work at Columbia and the UN incorporated both ideas as we were measuring the accessibility to climate education within schools, organizations, and lower income areas. It takes a certain level of introspection to bring what we've learned in the classroom and apply it to a large scale context. The experience made me realize that I would like to bring a more tangible approach to dealing with policymaking, as oftentimes movements can be more for optics than for legitimate change. Governmental solutions can help drive large-scale change through systems thinking, a problem that often handicaps businesses. Many businesses end up resorting to their previous practices, like using unsustainable amenities, as the local or federal level of government fails to provide proper recycling and mobilizing efforts. Youth experiences like mine are crucial to the climate action, as we have unique experiences that can give more insightful perspectives on what solutions should be made. Climate action solutions will immensely affect the youth when implemented. Therefore, it is important for us to have equal representation of youth to review what will be enacted. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Priya. You touched on so many important points. And as a fellow South Asian as well, I relate to you in the sense that, so much of our background, so much of our ancestral background is rooted in our connection with our planet, is rooted in our connection with food and agriculture and aspects of our environment that are so crucial. And it really does carry so much weight into our advocacy. And so just so grateful for you mentioning that, the importance of representation, the importance of youth leadership in this moment. And we're seeing now more than ever that young people are leading that change. And it's important for all of us, youth and non-youth, to really support our youth leadership in this field. So just so grateful to you and everything that you mentioned today, and the importance of tangibly making a difference. So with that, super excited to move on to our incredible next speaker, Sierra Phillips. Sierra, I am such a fan of you. I know many of our UNA family are also huge fans of you. You're such an incredible advocate for the climate. You do so much around storytelling. Your work with Nat Geo continues to inspire me and so many of our network as well. And so would love to give the floor to you to hear more about your journey, to hear more about your work with Nat Geo and what you're hoping to do within UNA also with regards to helping our climate advocacy. So the floor is yours.
Wow, what an introduction. I get spoiled here. I get to meet so many phenomenal people. I'm already seeing the participants' familiar faces. So thank you for coming. Really glad that you're here. I'm just a small role in the big picture of things, but I am a big believer that it's through the belief that we can make change, and by making those actions and having a chain reaction, that we are able to have massive amounts of change happen for communities, cities, and eventually, the rest of the world. I work from Antarctica to the Arctic to the Amazon. I work with the illegal wildlife pet trade, and I work specifically with the Lindblad National Geographic Partnership as a undersea specialist, which focuses on providing education towards conservation through videography. So get to see cute little nudibranchs, lots of different species, but it's sad, even within the past couple of years of diving, I've been diving since I was 10, we're already seeing changes in our marine ecosystems. And we can't really anticipate these things to turn around unless the culture changes. Policy doesn't change unless the people behind the policy want that change. And so that's why things like this are so important. I also think finding tangible solutions, I love that was said, but tangible solutions, looking at what is the final outcome. If you are doing something to help your environment, to work towards climate action, how is this going to cause a chain reaction that's going to be sustainable? Is this a one-time action, or is this something that can continue to cause positive effects later on? And speaking of positive effects that we're having, really excited to say that there is going to be a new affinity group. We are going to be having an environmental and climate action affinity group. And we've already been talking about really exciting events that can have some of that action forward. So if you're interested in joining, I'll provide the link in the chat below, and please sign up, because the more people we have involved, the more we can make a difference. So.
Thank you so much, Sarah. You touched on so many important points: the importance of environmental conservation, wildlife conservation, the importance of the diversity of our ecosystems, from wildlife to environments, to critically protected environments. It's just so important that we continue to preserve these aspects of our Earth that are so crucial to us and every single living being on this planet. And so just so grateful for you sharing that, and also hearing a little bit about your travels. Is just so fascinating, and I can't wait for us to dive into the Q&A later on to hear more from our members here, if they have any other questions in terms of what specific trips you've been on and how they've been for you. Just so thrilled that you've been able to share some of your insights with us as part of your incredible journey in climate advocacy. So with that, actually, we're going to move on to our next speaker, Mark Haver. Unfortunately, Mark can't be with us today. He's currently in Greece doing incredible climate advocacy, as one can imagine. And so he kindly sent us a video as a little bit of a preview. Mark is a regional rep for SO Alliance, a climate activist and policy thought leader. His work specifically focuses on ocean policy. He's such a kick-ass amazing person. We are going to go ahead and share screen to show you all this kind message that he sent for all of us. So without further ado, Ray, you got it. Fortunately, we cannot hear audio.
Are you not able to hear it?
No.
Okay, let me just do one more thing.
Okay. Sometimes when you share screen, there's like the checkbox for optimize for video clip and share sound. So that might help. And I can also try on my end. Thank you so much, Sierra, for putting that in the chat.
Are you able to hear it?
No sound, but do you want me to try, Ray? Maybe I'll try and see. If not, then we will send you all the link to Mark's video. So we'll do that. But let me try. Oh, if I can have screen sharing privileges. Thank you. Alrighty, let's try this. Alrighty.
Hey all, I'm so sorry
Thank
I
you.
am sending you a video. So sorry I cannot be there live, but listen, I want to thank you for tuning in, and I want to thank Hamaja for inviting me, and I want to thank our esteemed speakers for contributing their time as well. I'm Mark Haver, also known as @OceansWarrior, and I'm so excited to be able to be part of this foundational event to consecrate this Declaration of Human Rights for US youth. How exciting. I've been an advocate in the ocean climate space for about 6 years now, organizing grassroots community, especially in the United States and Canada, for ocean action. I first got involved with oceans because I realized how important they were in the global environmental context. The oceans are not just 70% of our planet blue and far away for some. They are our planet's main climate regulator. Our oceans are most of the volume on our planet. Our oceans are the most biomass on our planet. So understanding the problems afflicting our ocean is key to being able to recognize how we address achieving progress aligned with the fundamental human right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. That's why I've been advocating against new extractive and exploitative industries like deep sea mining. But rather than just working on campaigns, I've been focused on getting young people involved. We all have the agency to make a difference. And I think we all recognize the ways in which our relationship with the environment has gone south. It's time for us to reclaim what we think our role in global ecology is. We're still animals, we're still mammals, participating in ecosystems no matter how much we have tried to remove ourselves from the context in which every other living being exists on this planet. The cool thing is that as young people, and I think this is the exciting part of my work as a grassroots youth organizer, is recognizing that Gen Z has the opportunity for a paradigmatic shift. Being able to be the first generation whose development and prosperity grows not in opposition to nature, to climate, to generally the environment, but one where we too can thrive along with nature in promoting its preservation, conservation, and sustainable use. I hope these will be key tenets of the hope and opportunity that comes along with recognizing the clean, healthy, and sustainable environment as a human right. It's not just a foundational principle of keeping our own selves alive, but also recognizing the opportunity that we have to continue to thrive or do better. Thank you so much, and I look forward to connecting with you all. If you have any questions and answers, please do not hesitate to connect with me at Oceans Warrior on Instagram. Please enjoy the event. I'm sad I'm missing the Q&A because I know we'll get some really interesting thoughts and responses out there. But thank you again and have a great evening.
All right. Oh my God, that was so nice of Mark, especially because I know that he's currently juggling so much travel on his end. Don't know where he finds the energy, but I think that's the question we can all ask ourselves as climate activists. And the answer is right here in this room, because we all help to support each other through arguably one of the most difficult things to advocate for. So with that, super excited to turn it over to our incredible next speaker, Zephanie Smith Eisenstadt. Zephanie is honestly a personal inspiration of mine. Zephanie, we've known each other through UNA for the years, and you've just inspired me so much with your focus on inclusion, just being such a champion for unapologetically getting more young people into the room, getting more youth leadership when we need to. And your work in space advocacy has also been just so incredible to see. So with that, super excited to turn it over to you to hear your thoughts on the importance of youth leadership in the climate movement and the work that you've done in this field as well. So on to you, Zephanie.
Absolutely. I am so excited. I've been waiting all day. It is only 2 o'clock here on the islands, but I've been greatly looking. I started the day with the Space Generation Advisory Council. We had an entire discussion. So if there's space geeks on the call who want to hear all about space and climate, you'll have to tune into that webinar and listen to, we'll be putting that out. And then had a discussion about education with the Lieutenant Governor, and then I just got off a call with Assistant Secretaries of Education, and now we're here, you know, together, the global community with UNA. It's been back to back for the past 8 hours, and I'm just super, super excited to be with you all. We're here to talk about this crucial topic of climate action and its implications for equity, inclusion, human rights on Earth and in space. That's right, in space. As we're commemorating this 75th anniversary, I think it's essential to recognize that the future of human rights rests in us, in the young people who are taking action, like each of you on the call. I'm totally geeked out by all that you all are doing, and super, super fans of each of you, to advance the rights of those who are also coexisting alongside us in our local communities and in the broader global ecosystem. So kudos to you, Himija, and the team at UNA USA for continuing to center youth voices and perspectives in leadership. We know that climate change is not just an environmental issue, it is a human rights issue that disproportionately affects the most vulnerable populations right here in the United States and on the islands, but also around the world. So this initiative, bringing your voices together and exemplifying the power of youth in shaping the future and championing action on human rights, is super near and dear to my heart. Just a few fast facts about me. My background is in government. I have work experience in each branch. You heard a little bit about some of what a typical day might look like in my life, but I've worked in legislative, executive, and the judicial branches, and at every level of governance, from local to global, especially as it relates to the advocacy work that goes on with UNA USA and the World Federation of UN Associations and the UN more broadly. So public service is really what my passion is, and I want all of you to consider that as a path too for your career, shameless plug. But I do hold a master's in education, and I teach at both the university and the high school level. Okay, well, I guess at the toddler level too. Now that I'm a mom, I do speak Baby Shark, and my toughest negotiator is about 3 feet tall and just turned 3. So there's that. But I got my start at the United Nations with the NAACP in Geneva, and our work with the High Commissioner on Human Rights, Human Rights Council. I actually met my awesome husband, Ari, who some of you know and have worked with or heard from at the Global Summit recently, through a mutual friend that I met there in Geneva as we were helping to coordinate the first youth forums to ever occur in conjunction with the Human Rights Council. And I have some photos I can show later if you're interested about that work. But my first leadership role in UN spaces was with an organization called Sustain Us, the US youth movement for sustainability. And our mission was to create a better, more equitable and sustainable world that works for everyone, where no one is left behind. And I say was because Sustain Us was kind of the OG, like the original youth movement in this space. And in recent years, so much has transpired from our work and in the global community. I mean, during my time, we saw the transition and elevation of the conversation driven by youth globally through the elevation of the Sunrise Movement and the resurgence of the global marches and the Global Climate Action Summit, which took place in California, and so much more. We were among the first, from what I understand, to catapult youth onto the global climate stage through our delegation programs, which I had the pleasure of leading. But just to rewind it a little bit further, throughout high school, and this is where some of these connections start to come into play, throughout high school and college, I had the pleasure of serving alongside some of my civil rights heroes and heroes on the National Youth Committee and the National Board of the NAACP. And so during that time, I was honored to participate in the drafting, creation, and establishment of the NAACP's first resolutions to create national and local standing committees on environmental justice alongside flagship issues and pillars of our advocacy work, like economic justice and quality education, a lot of what's espoused in the SDGs. So with that background in mind, I just want to offer a couple of fast facts about sort of this conversation we're here to have today and the intersections between the advocacy work and environment, climate, and even outer space. So I talked about kind of, I don't know, 10 plus years ago, but bringing it fast forward just this past fall to COP27 in Egypt. Hima is amazing. If you didn't catch her coverage there, go back. I'm sure it's in her stories. But this was the first time that young people and the environmental and climate justice movement had full-scale pavilion and program spaces. You know, we're still working to center vital youth voices and voices from the margins. We've come a long way, but really with your help and your participation in conversations like this and your leadership and your commitment to actually take this conversation offline into your digital and social, physical communities is really what we want you to leave here with today. But now, so I mentioned this whole concept of outer space. And actually, I do want to show, Ray, if you can pull up the image from Lake Tahoe, I'll show that in a minute. I'll tell you when, if you can get to it. Otherwise, I'll get to it during Q&A. But you know, ultimately, with the rapid advancements of technology in recent years, and just within the past year, just within the past semester, we've also been working to kind of center conversations around space and space-based technology, space industry, equity, access to opportunity. Last month during Juneteenth and Black Space Week, I was honored to co-create alongside an incredible team of superheroes working at NASA and the Space Council, a panel called the Artemis Generation. We did a futures roundtable where, among other topics, we discussed the intersections between space and climate. And the reality is, as we explore the potential of space, it's crucial to ensure that our endeavors in this frontier contribute to a more equitable and inclusive world beyond our borders, beyond the overview. They call it the overview effect, when people have that light bulb moment that goes off the astronauts, when they are seeing that big blue marble for the first time, the images captured by those satellites and those space photos really have shaped our movement. They've created a deep connection for us. They've allowed us to see that there are no borders on this spaceship Earth, this island Earth, as we call it here. And outer space ultimately just offers unique opportunities for addressing climate change. You can imagine the ways providing data on environmental patterns and monitoring things like deforestation through the images, assessing the impact of disasters. That information that we are able to glean increasingly more economically through the accessibility of being able to do things like put satellites into space is vital in formulating effective climate policies and strategies, et cetera. But what's important for us to bear in mind as we're thinking about this drafting process and what needs to be put in place for the future brings us back to this conversation around equity and inclusion. The rights for all life, indeed human life as well, must be at the forefront of space initiatives. We have to strive to do things here on Earth, like bridge the digital divide and ensure that all communities, regardless of their geographic location or socioeconomic status or access to satellite data and access to climate models and other technological advancements, will have the opportunity to participate globally, and we get to empower our communities right where we are and globally to make make informed actions in terms of combating climate change and doing what needs to be done locally. So indeed, human rights principles have to guide our actions as we delve into outer space, which you'll start to hear a lot more of. And as we expand our presence beyond Earth, we really have the bottom line is we have to ensure that space exploration and utilization are carried out in a manner that respects the rights and dignity of all living beings and individuals. And so this includes things like addressing space debris management, and responsible resource extraction and so forth. I don't know if you're able to show it, Ray, but I woke up yesterday to the news. There was this powerful image of, here it is. The first thing I looked at when I opened Instagram, why do I look at Instagram when I wake up, was video showcasing all the trash that was left behind. This is Lake Tahoe on the West Coast. My mom got married there, beautiful, special place. And so when I thought about making this kind of transition to why I get involved in the conversations around space, it's because, to give you a parallel image, if you go to the next slide, Ray, we're doing the same thing in space as we are here. So clearly we're still figuring it out here on this side, but we cannot afford to do the same thing as we venture off beyond the planet. Our efforts cannot be confined to Earth alone. We've got to recognize both the challenges and the opportunities and the significance of harnessing these powers and technologies, but it also adopting this sort of rights-based approach to pave a way for a sustainable and just future for all, not just our planet, because we know that there's so much more out there. So my passion is civic engagement. So I hope in the Q&A we can go a little bit deeper into some of the ways that you can get involved and help, drill down. And of course, I'm happy to share about some resources and avenues for engagement, depending on what your interests are. But, it all boils down to, we'll practice, because I've got a couple more speakers before we hear from you. But, put into the chat, why are you here today? I think so much of this conversation that we're here is about getting to the heart and soul of why this matters. And so communicating the answer to the question that won't go away, what's your why? So while I'm wrapping this up and while we're preparing to hear from you, maybe you can offer us some context. Why are you here and why does this matter to you? And hopefully we can go a little deeper, in the Q&A on some of the topics that you're specifically looking to explore within your communities.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Stephanie. So many thoughts to try to sum it up in a meaningful way. Just so grateful for you talking about the importance and parallels between space technology and implementing conservation efforts and really applying best practices from both to really advance justice and equity in everything that we do around efforts of sustainability. You mentioned COP27, the importance of policy at the international level, at the local level, and COP27 was such an eye-opening event. Thank you so much. And honestly, if you do go on to the Youth Observer stories and you're able to see some of the interviews we were able to feature, many of them were because of Zephanie and the context that she put me with during COP27. So just so grateful to Zephanie for all of those incredible contacts, and just really want to give a plug for upcoming climate conferences. We have Climate Week New York coming up. We have COP28 coming up. And Ian, who is our next speaker, who I will turn it over to shortly, can definitely give you the rundown on that. But it's absolutely so important that we continue to talk about the importance of implementing youth leadership in every aspect of climate action, from the policy side to the implementation side to the technology side, and ensuring that representation and diversity throughout is just so crucial. And the time to act is now. And so Zephanie, thank you so much for touching on all of these really important things and really contextualizing through your stories, through the pictures that you shared with us, why this effort really matters now more than ever. And so just also want to give a plug before we turn it over to definitely share your why. What's your why? Why are you here today? Why do you care about this climate, this environment that we all share, this extraordinary common resource that we all have a vested interest to protect? So feel free to share your stories as we continue. Without further ado, super excited to turn it over to actually another incredible person that I had the opportunity to meet during COP27. Ian Monroe is just an incredible person, an incredible researcher and lecturer in climate economics, in climate technology. The work that you've done, Ian, in coalition building during COP27, after COP27, was just so incredibly inspiring to me. And the work that you do to uplift youth voices in everything that you do, in the coalitions that you've built, and the work that you continue to do, has just been so incredibly inspiring. It's always really heartwarming to see another youth ally in this space. And so just want to turn it over to you and let you have the floor to talk about your work with Climate Positive Investing Alliance at Stanford, and the work that you do around Etho Capital with climate financing and technology. So on to you, Ian. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for those very kind words, and I'll strive to live up to them. And just great to be part of such an exciting conversation that I think just needs to happen a lot more often, quite frankly. So I've been working on climate solutions pretty much my whole career, and my why is I grew up on this small farm in Northern California, a few hours north of San Francisco, and I could just see the impacts that drought was having on my family's farm. And literally as a kid, starting elementary school even, I would have nightmares about wildfire sweeping through our valley and destroying everything. And I started reading the science saying that was more and more likely in California, and particularly in my part of Northern California, Mendocino County. And so that got me studying climate science and climate tech solutions and international development policy in school for undergrad and grad school, and then working around the world and over 30 countries on implementing climate solutions, originally mostly from the science and engineering side, and then turned into more policy and a bit of tech, launched a tech platform to help everyone track climate impacts and scale up climate solutions called OroEco, and one of the first technology platforms in the early days of the app ecosystem, right around when the iPhone came out. And then out of that, while also teaching climate solution stuff at Stanford, that spun out what's now a financial technology and investing platform called Etho Capital, which is really my day job these days, is running climate-focused investing at Etho Capital, helping try to push the world's biggest pools of money out of climate problems and into climate solutions, and do that at the speed that climate science says is necessary, which is a lot deeper and faster than the status quo pledges around net zero by 2050, et cetera, as probably all of you on the call know. I still do teach climate solution courses at Stanford. Well, I've been teaching for more than a decade now, and with a co-author just published a textbook called Solving Climate Change, which we were actually kind of shocked to find was one of the first college textbooks to really put together all the technology pieces and the policy pieces, the economics, finance pieces, and the communications, just how do we ultimately elevate truth about not just the reality about climate problems, but also the reality, all the good news about all the solutions that we already have that we just need to scale up much, much more quickly. So any of you interested, you can check out this 8 pillars to solve climate change action framework we have in this new textbook at solveclimate.org. And as mentioned, out of Etho Capital, we've helped launch something called the Climate Positive Investing Alliance, which is much larger than our Etho Capital company. It's a growing coalition of nonprofits, of leaders really throughout the climate community, including a lot of youth involvement, investors, asset owners, asset managers, exciting climate solution technology partners. And we're really just trying to be united in pushing for real action, not just a bunch of greenwashing BS, which frankly, unfortunately, is just becoming more and more of a problem. And youth voices need to be an essential piece of this conversation. I guess I have a few too many gray hairs to be counted as a youth myself, though I certainly, as mentioned, think of myself very much as a youth ally and very young at heart with what we do. With Etho Capital, we actually often have some of our best analysis on the overall environmental, social, and governance sustainability of company come from youth climate leaders who work with us as Etho Fellows. So if any of you on the call are interested in helping sort out which companies are really leaders from those that are just putting out greenwash marketing hype, happy to have you involved in that process and this larger coalition we're building with the Climate Positive Investing Alliance. So as I mentioned, my why was growing up on this farm, having these nightmares about wildfire and seeing the changes from climate change. Flash forward a few decades, unfortunately, a few years ago, that nightmare came true. My family's farm was in the middle of one of these massive wildfires in Northern California that just literally destroyed our community overnight. And if it wasn't for a dog barking in the middle of the night, waking up my cousin, who then started a chain of neighbors and relatives banging on doors, probably half my family, over a dozen family members, would have died that night, because this was one of these massive fires moving on literal hurricane force winds much faster than you could even run, traveling miles and minutes. And unfortunately, on the gloom and doom side, it is real. You know, we're seeing this, we're experiencing this. On the positive side, we have the solutions we need, and we can always make them better and cheaper, but really, in many ways, solving climate change, we overcomplicate it. The core thing we need to do is stop burning fossil fuels and stop deforestation too. But we're still doing a really crappy job elevating that core message that to solve climate change, we need to stop burning fossil fuels. And by the way, if we stop burning fossil fuels, we also avoid over 10 million deaths just from fossil-linked air pollution that isn't even connected to climate change. And then there's even more air pollution now from all the wildfire smoke connected to climate change. So that 10 million deaths per year connected to the petrochemical industry, that's really probably an underestimate, because it doesn't include all the deaths linked to petrochemical toxins, microplastic pollution, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's really both pretty awful status quo and a huge opportunity, and a huge truth that we need to be elevating with all our work around climate, is that as we solve climate change, as we scale up climate solutions, there are just tremendous additional benefits that lead to a healthier, wealthier, overall better planet for everyone, and can rectify a lot of our social justice issues at the same time. And I would also say that, as you're probably already feeling, now, being in this work for over 2 decades in my case, and even just being in this work for a few months, at times it can get depressing, because there is a lot of disinformation, misinformation. We take steps forward, then we have steps back. And one of the most important things, I think, is just having coalitions of connected, passionate climate champions like we're fostering in this conversation here, and supporting each other. And I've certainly had my ups and downs in this work, but it's staying connected to many friends around the world, working hard from really every angle that they can. Like a friend of mine who was the chief sustainability officer for the city of LA, where I am at the moment, that I just spoke with. It's those kind of constant conversations, collaborating and supporting each other in the process is essential to scale up this work. And it's important to not get too overwhelmed by the big picture. I think, at least for me, climate action really starts at home. It's really about getting fossil fuels out of our own lives everywhere we can, pushing our communities to do that, pushing our parents to do that, pushing our grandparents to do that. And constantly, there's lots of research showing that the most effective advocates to get people to decarbonize their homes and their lives are children and grandchildren. And in this way, youth really have way more leverage than we often expect, because youth, and I say we, because again, I still think of myself as youth, even though I'm far too gray haired to really be one, I guess, at this point. But it's really about it, sometimes having these uncomfortable conversations to elevate the core truths about, hey, it's actually very possible and highly desirable in a lot of different ways to stop cooking with natural gas, for example, and shift to electricity, shift to EVs for driving if you can't take public transit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All things that most of y'all know on the call, but it's still having these conversations constantly. The research is showing that we're not doing that. And it starting at home, starting with friends and family and community, building that up to the biggest pools of capital in the world, which is where we play with our Etho Capital decarbonized index funds. That's important too. But ultimately, the fossil fuel companies that are the biggest causes of the problem, we own them. The biggest owners of fossil fuel companies are public pension plans for retirees, for retired teachers, for retired public workers, for individual pension recipients, and those just investing for retirement through IRAs and 401ks, et cetera. We actually own the companies that are the biggest source of the problem, and we need to get rid of them. And frankly, I think in most cases, push them into bankruptcy as quickly as we can, because they are not making real efforts to transition. And I've seen them say they're going to do that for now 2 decades and always walk back. So it's really about just pushing this change, pushing the money out of problems into solutions, and starting at home and doing it with our friends and family community, supporting each other in the process. So excited to be part of this conversation. And thanks again for having me.
Thank you so much, Ian. You touched on so many important points, connecting climate investment to the communities, to the people that need it, to the people leading the technological advances, to the people creating those policy changes. It's so important that we continue investing in these communities, recognizing our agency as young people, something that I always quote, and I always steal her quote, but honestly, she's one of my favorite people. Global Special Envoy for Global Youth, Abby Finkenauer, always says that being a young person is your superpower. Your youth is your superpower. And it's something that I shamelessly quote pretty much in every session. And so I'm quoting it again, obviously, because I have to. Being a young person is very much your superpower. It gives you agency. It gives you the power to create so much change. You're joining a global network of young people who are all lobbying, who are all fighting for this same change every single day. It's one of the most enriching collaborative communities to be a part of, and we need to continue to support each other as we continue to work towards this type of monumental global change that we need and that we're working towards. So just so grateful, Ian, and thank you to all our incredible speakers. I know that we're at 8:45 and we definitely want people to have the opportunity to leave on time, but also just want to recognize how many incredible contributions we've had in the chat. Ray, we definitely have to save these because I feel like this could be such a cool story montage of just how many incredible people are on this call today, calling in from all over, sharing their stories for what compels their climate advocacy, what compels them to do this type of work. It's just so inspiring. I cannot stop reading these. So if anyone wants to come off mute and share some of the things that they put in chat, please feel free to do so, because this is exactly why you're here with us today. It's because your stories around climate have led you to this space of realizing that all of us need to be together in our advocacy. And just so, I can't even say how inspired I am just to see so many people bringing all of their everything to the table to be with us here today. And so before I stop talking, just want to kind of outline the quick next steps. So We'll open it up for a Q&A. Definitely want you all to have a chance to ask our incredible panel of speakers questions, but we're also going to tie it into the consultation aspect of today's development session. As you know, we started this effort to put together a Youth Declaration of Human Rights in honor of the upcoming 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This is an effort that really manifested from our listening tour, hearing about the issues, the rights that young people cared about and were fighting for, and really wanting to make a stand of youth solidarity around core rights that we need to be focusing on, things that the world needs to get on board for in order for us to recognize true equality and justice for all young people across the globe. And so we're putting together this Youth Declaration of Human Rights to give you all, as young people, the opportunity to voice the rights that you care about. And climate and the environment is something that's sorely lacking in UDHR, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is why we're so thrilled we're having this consultation to hear from you all the importance of youth rights around climate, and why it's just so crucial that we continue to highlight it. And so this is the part where you all get to contribute and share your thoughts for what specific rights around climate we need to be advocating for in order to fulfill those universal youth rights that we all talk about. So we'll kind of open it up for a joint Q&A/contributive discussion. If anyone has any questions for our panelists, feel free to raise your hand. If you have things you want to contribute to our declaration, feel free to raise your hand. We will take any and all things. And so with that, I will open it up. Does anyone have any initial thoughts that they want to share for our speakers or themselves? And Sarah, I see your hand.
Hey, thanks. No, something that I think often gets overlooked when it comes to climate action and making change that ends up being sustainable and having that ripple effect that we were talking about is looking at the ecosystems as a whole. I always do this whenever I'm working with children. So take a breath in. That's for all the trees. Take another breath. That's for all the Proterozoic algae. So half of our oxygen is coming from the land and half of it is coming from the sea. And through the intertidal zones, those two biomes are very interconnected. And so you can't reject one or the other. You have to, and I love that we've brought in space into the conversation as well, because that is also part of our environment, making sure that every zone is protected. And another way of looking at how we can protect these different biomes is looking at what are important features within each area. What are important features within your own home? What are the keystone species? What are the invasive species? What are the overabundant species? Look at what's being traded in, the illegal pet trade in your communities. Look at what's happening to your corals, to your other fungi. Look at what's happening from your home, because no one's going to know your home better than you. And so take a look at your home, talk to people in your community, and see where we can make a difference there and protect the planet as a whole. Because if you leave out little components, it becomes a domino effect and it ends up affecting everything. And so I hope that's something that we end up seeing. I know that was a lot within those initiatives that we're putting out, that we are including what's happening to our entire ecosystems and within each of these biomes. So, and from the home perspective as well.
Oh my God, that was so incredibly powerful, Sierra. Just recognizing that we are truly just one part of the ecosystem that we live in, and that we have a responsibility to protecting all these aspects of the ecosystems that we live in, and that we're influenced by in so many intricate, complex ways. It's just such an incredible way of framing it. And it really speaks to the importance of representation and the importance of fighting for representation, not only just within human species, but throughout, especially for species who can't speak for themselves. And I think that the moment that someone contextualized that for me, as a fellow conservation expert, like that was the moment where it was one of those like brain chemistry changing moments where I'm like, yes, we're all in it and we're all fighting for the protection of all of us. This is one of the most comprehensive human rights focused movements that we can have. So just so appreciate you saying that. And I see Ose put in the chat, the UDHR reads that everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. I might add a clause to ours that reemphasizes this with the focus on access to clean air, water, and natural resources. Thank you so much, Ose, for mentioning that. That's such a critical component. Just recognizing that in order for us to live up to human dignity and rights, we absolutely need to be focusing on these important tenets of environmental justice that are so crucial to our well-being and the well-being of all of us. So just so appreciate that, Ose. That's such a good point. And Gabriel, I see you. Hello. It's so great seeing you. And I love your why as well. Just the continued importance of talking about the environment that we live in and how so much of our education needs to be reformed to talk about our relationship with the environment. Just so appreciate you sharing a little bit of that. And Stephanie, thank you for asking us to share our why. What a great exercise. Just so appreciate it. And so I'm wondering if anyone would like to raise their hand, maybe something they put in the chat that they want to verbalize. Any questions for our panelists? Any other contributions? In terms of the environment, are there any aspects of environmental protection that we haven't addressed yet that you feel is important to address? We talked about air, we talked about ocean conservation and policy. Also, if anyone has any resources to throw out, definitely also want to flag in the chat that Ian mentioned that if anyone's interested in a fellowship at ethocapital.com, they can send him an email. Ian, just so grateful for that. The more opportunities we can share with our young people, the better. Just so appreciate that. And Bhavana, thank you for saving me. Feel free to share. Super excited to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so my name is Bhavna. As I shared in the chat, I work a lot on student wellness and student mental health. And I think a really big overlooked part of that is how climate and specifically issues with access to natural resources like water or access to electricity or people losing jobs when, as my younger brother Ishan mentioned in the chat, it had my name too. He works a lot on homelessness prevention efforts. And a big issue there is a lot of the jobs that are serving some of these companies that are doing not so great things. When those factories close for different reasons, it contributes to the homelessness crisis. And again, it also leads back to issues in education where students are then facing housing insecurity that affects their attendance rates. So there's a lot of different ways that all of these different issues are intertwined. And with the nonprofit that I work with, our broader goal is creating global care infrastructure, and that looks like a lot of different things. Sometimes that's addressing root causes of reasons for attendance gaps, such as housing insecurity, food insecurity, lack of access to clean water. And we found some pretty innovative nonprofits to partner with in those very niche spaces. So I guess one question that I was thinking of in response to Stephanie's prompt about how we're going to take this beyond the call would be identifying nonprofits that are specifically working in the space of climate anxiety or providing resources to communities that are being affected or most affected by climate related issues. So I guess my ask for the panelists and for other people in this call would be, if you know any nonprofits that are in this space, if you know any other people that might be able to provide some advice, I would really appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
I have a few that you can get connected with. Something that's really excellent that Habitat for Humanity has started is they've tried to start using sustainable resources for their building. And that's become a chain reaction throughout the chapters. If you're ever interested in being involved in a chapter, I'm a chapter that I can help get you involved. It's really a great way to get hands-on service that you know directly how it's impacting. Another thing that you can look at is citizen science work, I think is really good to look at. So National Geographic provides a list of current citizen science projects that are going on. And in fact, in their tourism side, they place out projects and lets you know how it's affecting to the local communities. And let me say how it's tied in towards that. For instance, they work a lot with Alaskan wildlife and fisheries, and fishing is a very important part of Alaskan community. And so they make sure that the First Nations people are protected in the fishing, and the local Alaskans are protected, while also providing information on how to fish similar quantities in sustainable methods. Because the world isn't black, white, yes, no. There are solutions, and there are ways that we can communicate together to be able to find ways to protect everyone in every living situation. Because it's nice to think, oh, we live in this magical land where if we give X, Y, and Z, this is what you do, that it works for everyone. But that's not true. Everyone has different incomes. Everybody has different living situations, home trials. And so it's really important that we look at, who are we talking to? Are we being respectful of their background? And what solutions can we provide for them that are actually effective, not just ones that allow us to have the glory of saying that we are doing something sustainable, because saying is not doing.
Thank you so much, Sierra, for that really comprehensive answer. And thank you, Bhavana, for that great question. Ose, I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, I'll turn my camera on. Hello. Yeah, my name is Ose, and in regards to language that might be good for the declaration, I think a couple things come to mind, particularly calling out the idea that not always, but a lot of the times, the countries that are perpetrating like environmental atrocities are not the countries that are going to bear the brunt of the actions that they're taking. So making sure that we're letting the young people, but also the not young people, just the people who are most impacted by environmental atrocities, they should be at the forefront of the conversation for environmental justice. And so we should call on people from nations like the United States that are contributing negatively to the environment to, number one, take a step back and let folks who are more directly impacted speak their truth, but then also turning the flashlight or the spotlight for organizers who are based in the United States to hold our own systems accountable to kind of like stop doing the things that we're doing.
Thank you so much, Ose. Recognizing the importance of equity and championing climate equity, realizing that the brunt oftentimes falls on those who have perpetrated the least amount of damage is so crucial, and just so grateful for you mentioning that. And yeah, I think that as we're nearing the end, I wonder if any other people have any thoughts or questions, comments that they want to ask Ishan. I will pass it over to you.
Hi. So just to connect with my sisters and Ose said just now, I read a little bit about something called the Willow Project. And so I'm pretty new to climate advocacy, but as I put in the chat before, I do a lot of homeless advocacy, homeless prevention advocacy, and essentially one part of the project that is often overlooked or is sort of used to justify it, I guess, is that there are jobs that they're creating for individuals that live in Alaska, permanent or temporary jobs for the project. And seeing as Alaska is like one of the biggest oil fields in the United States, I sort of just want to get people's thoughts on how we can create more opportunities and sort of different like training programs or more sustainable employment for people in these regions who might not have other options. And so they might be forced, or they might think that their best option is to work for these destructive projects.
Thank you so much, Ishan. The importance of growing your climate economy. So important. Thank you for sharing that. Ian, I will pass it over to you. And if anyone has any last minute thoughts, feel free to raise your hand now. I know that we're very much nearing time, but we definitely want to get everyone's contributions. Ian, over to you.
Just some quick responses to the great comments so far. On the job training side of things, we are already having a huge shortage of electricians that we need to transition to electrifying everything that we can. And it's estimated we'll have something like a shortage of around 600,000 electricians by 2030 just in the US alone. So electrician training really at this point should be integrated into every high school, and certainly lots of retraining for example, oil and gas workers. It makes a lot more sense to transfer those skill sets into electrician training than say software development. And along those lines, on the training education side, getting back to the climate anxiety side of things, I'm super excited about what the state of New Jersey just is pioneering now, which is mandatory K through 12 climate solutions education, where really importantly, it's not just about the realities of gloom and doom, climate change is happening, but that always being coupled with solutions. Let's figure out teamwork collaboratively, how to work on these different pieces. And there's already science showing that the more you get kids, and I have a 4-year-old son, so even now we're talking about climate change and how all the vehicles need to be electrified, et cetera. The more you get early education around climate that's solutions-based, the more it feels like a empowering thing, as well as just a gateway to all sorts of science, technology, policy, economics education, and the kind of specialized skill training like electrician, electrical engineering training that we need everywhere. So I think it really, this interconnectivity of education everywhere, solutions-based education, and overall, decrease in anxiety, because that kind of education is ultimately really empowering, and it's also training our world to have the skills that we need to make this transition as quickly as we can.
Thank you so much, Ian. 3 cheers for climate education. So, so important. Sierra, I will pass it over to you.
Ian, you've just said so many phenomenal things this session. Thank you. Really information that people don't think about quite often. And I think it starts with education. That's where it starts. So that makes me so thrilled to hear when that's happening. And I think education and having a community where you can share ideas and you can collaborate on plans together. I just saw, Rachel, your comment on knowing more about the affinity group. So I just wanted to give a little bit more. And talking with Farah, we really want to make this something that is inclusive. So it's going to pair with the other affinity groups on activities. It's going to be pairing with youth on projects. We've already been in communication with National Geographic about doing some educational trips for UNA youth. We are looking at having galas that come forward where the money goes towards World Wildlife Foundation, other organizations, paired with New York City to hopefully make sure that these finances are going where they're supposed to go. So if you'd like to get involved, if you have ideas, please email me, please talk to me. I sometimes take a while to get back because sometimes I'm overseas, but I will absolutely respond to you. I've placed my email down below because I think that great ideas don't come from one person, they come from everyone. And coming from everyone coming from a different background, you each are experiencing a different form of environmental impact. I know we mentioned wildfires. While we were in our conversation just now, I got an alert that there is a wildfire in my region and that evacuation may be in order. Whereas if you're in Alaska, you're dealing with glacial melt. It's you're in Florida. When I was there, we're seeing sea level rise all across the United States. We're seeing things happening, but that doesn't mean that there can't be things that can change. I think a big part of that change is the corporations that are part of promoting sustainability, put those in the limelight, and those that are not, finding common ground with them so that you can communicate why action needs to change and find ways to collaborate with those groups. Don't make them the enemy. Say, hey, what else can we do? What are new solutions? Let's try and find those. And sometimes you hit walls, but you keep going. You don't stop, because one voice makes a small impact, but then having 19 voices, I think we have here, that's a much bigger impact. And we'll see how this expands, maybe 100, maybe 500, who knows? So I really hope that you guys all are interested in sharing your ideas and participating. Please reach out to me anytime. And thank you so much. This has been a fantastic event. So.
Oh my God, Sierra, I could not have ended us off on a better note. Thank you so much. Thank you to our incredible panel of speakers, to everyone who joined and participated in the consultation, and know that your contributions are well beyond the scope of this meeting. There are opportunities to submit additional feedback through the form that Ray shared in the chat. Please feel free to reach out to us directly if you have any other questions. And I'm going to pass it over to Ray now to close us off with a few advocacy action items and our very traditional group photo. So Ray, on to you.
Yes, thank you, Himaja, and thank you again to all of our fantastic speakers and all the participants for sharing your stories and your work. So I just really quickly have an advocacy ask, which is something you can do immediately after this call to take action. And this is coming directly from our grassroots advocacy manager, Maria Mala, here at the UNA USA National Office. So as some of you may know, the president's budget has requested a $1.6 billion contribution to the Green Climate Fund this year. And if you're not familiar, the Green Climate Fund is a critical element of the Paris Agreement, and it basically helps vulnerable societies adapt to unavoidable impacts of climate change by investing in low emission and climate resilience development. So it needs to be secured through action with Congress. So I will drop a link in the chat if you're interested in signing on to that petition to help make sure that this is fully funded and moving forward. And then the second thing I wanted to mention, because this is such a full and rich and robust conversation that we're having, we're actually going to have a part 2 to this session on July 27th. So we'll have another climate and environment session with another set of speakers. So I will drop links to everything I just mentioned in the chat. And as Himaja mentioned, we will take our usual group photo. So if you feel comfortable, please feel free to come off of video. I will put us into gallery mode and I will do a countdown so everyone can make sure they look good. All right.
Our best climate positive smiles.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to count down now. It looks like everyone's ready. So 3, 2, 1. Okay, beautiful. Thank you all so much. And feel free to stay on the call just for a minute longer so I can drop in those resources in the chat.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Yes, as Ray puts it in the chat, just so appreciate you all again joining us here today. We'll continue sharing more resources. As you know, we are quickly wrapping up our consultation efforts. So as we continue to do that, please feel free to join other consultations. We're also going to be working towards putting together a drafting group to help us draft this actual declaration after we've collected all of this incredible input. For those who have reached out sharing interest, thank you so much. We're hopefully I'm going to be moving forward with that very shortly in terms of selecting our final group to take us forth with drafting this declaration. And we'll be releasing more info on that. Ray has just put that in the chat so I can stop filibustering. Thank you all so much for your time tonight. Just hope you have a great rest of your evenings or wherever you are. Just so grateful for all that you do. And you're part of this global climate community. We're here to support each other. We're here to keep the momentum going. With that, have a